Hello and welcome finally to the second episode of BigFinish-Scussion, the brand new spin-off of Whano's Whoscussion. Links for the latter will be provided in the description below, as well as the last Whoscussion episode that this is following on after. Today we are joined by the incredibly talented, the ridiculously awesome, and in the best way possible, superfluous, That Random Guy. Hello, That Random Guy.
Hey, hello there. I feel honoured. I feel honoured indeed. I haven't felt this good since I won honours at school. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome and very, very deserving. I am, of course, TheLateCrow. And today in BigFinish-Scussion, we're going to be picking up in the style that Whoscussion Part B left off, taking one 8th Doctor story and then following that up with a monthly range story. Today, for the 8th Doctor, we're going to be jumping into scenes from her life, which is part of Doom Coalition 2. And then once we're done with that, we'll be checking out Project Twilight with the 6th Doctor and Evelyn. So, let's get started. Let's jump in with the sexy voiced Paul McGann and scenes from her life.
He so is, eh? Like, there's no other way to describe it.
It actually is. I'd listen
like,
to
he's
him.
my secret life partner. I'm just telling you right now.
I mean,
actually, I live in New Zealand. He's my secret husband.
Oh, I thought I was your secret husband.
Yeah, but you're the one I don't tell the other husband about.
Oh, I see.
Hey, there we go.
Okay.
There we go. I'm being progressive, thank you.
Oh, of course. Right, so scenes from her life, we have the 8th Doctor, and he's currently travelling with Medtech Chinka, Liv Chinka, and Helen Sinclair. Last time we left them off, which was a while ago for Whoscussion, so do go and check out that episode for a refresh on where we're at. But they had recently visited a world where the Vord home planet had been destroyed, which confused the 8th Doctor, because last he checked it wasn't destroyed.
Now, are they not native to Marinus?
Give me one moment. TARDIS Wiki can answer that question.
That's the thing I found really weird. I was like, is it Marinus? But then if I was... Oh, sorry, you first.
Sorry. Place of origin is the Vord homeworld, and TARDIS Wiki confirms they were first seen in the Keys of Marinus. So
they're not native to Marinus, they were invaders. That makes a lot of sense, actually, to be honest. Because when we first met them in the Keys of Marinus, they were not the nicest people. And that acid river?
No.
Dang, that acid river, man.
The acid river, just acid.
And rivers.
Could you imagine if that was done in J&T's era? Would have been very brutal.
Oh, that would have been brutal. J&T would have made sure people knew exactly what was happening. Like, actually, J&T was he was on another level.
And then you just had the 6th Doctor poke his head and just, James Bond, you'll forgive me if I
don't drone you.
But back to the 8th Doctor, scenes from her life. So they're trying to work out why the Vord homeworld is not there. And yeah, they come across the place where it was, and they pick up on some Artron energy traces, which they can follow after, which they do.
I love Helen. Helen, she's just like, Artron? Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And Liv's just like, it means time machines.
Yeah, I love it when Liv's just like, he just says words. It's the joys of being a companion. But while this is going on, we are getting glimpses of Lord Stormblood. Well, right here.
Yes, of course, I'm Lord Stormblood.
And Lady... How do you pronounce this? And
Lady
Sepultura?
Yeah, Sepultura.
It said once, and because it's...
It actually is said once. It is actually only said once, and it's Sylvia. I was going to say Sylvia Noble. It's Jacqueline King.
Yes, but yeah, they're doing some experiments, which, given the protesting from the prisoner they're using, are less than humane experiments, and they've got their almost their Igor, I guess, swordfish.
Yeah, so I love that he's called Swordfish. It sounded like a 60s James Bond henchman.
It does. It's so good. And while all this is going on again, we have Kalera, who is... We get glimpses, and this is where the title Scenes from Her Life come from. We get intermittent flashes of her life. And when we first come across her, she's trying to get into the Time Lord Academy, but she's a psychic and and not particularly good at controlling at this point, which is causing them some concern a bit, to say the least. So that's a thing going, and we'll learn more about that as the story develops. So the Eighth Doctor, Liv and Helen, they go rocketing along this Archon trace through the vortex, and the Doctor's quite surprised when they come across something anchored in their way, because it's the vortex. You can't anchor in the vortex.
I love it. It's just like, you can't still in the vortex.
He's just totally perplexed. It's great. And they come across what is basically described as a city sitting there, and is explained that it's a TARDIS, just with its outer dimension stripped away by the force of the time winds and what have you. And so they rocket in to go and have, the Doctor goes to have a look around. He tells Liv and Helen to stay, but I love the interaction that Helen and Liv have as he walks out the door. So just, how long do you usually leave it before you go after him? About 3 minutes. So good. And so they follow after him. And the Doctor comes across, look, Stormblood, what?
Of course, yes.
Oh, he's my favourite character in this.
Yeah, the way he says it, it's like, my word.
Oh, it's just so good. And so they're got a little bit crazy, which is attributed to the fact that they're in a very rickety old antique TARDIS sitting in the middle of the vortex. And so they invite him to dinner. And they've never seen the chef, That stuff comes up the dumb waiter. Never met the chef before. Which, just listen to the story. You'll get what we're on about there.
Actually, listen to the story.
It's actually about how they've never met the waiter. That's the whole story. No, it's not. But Kalera is or we presume is the test subject for these two, Lord Stormblood and Lady Sepultura. And she's in quite a lot of pain, being rigged up to neural networks and what have you. And after going and exploring, Liv and Helen come across her, and they take pity on her because empathy. You see something that looks humanoid stuck in something that looks painful. You're going to feel for them, I think.
Good old simian brain, eh?
Yeah. Just as a tangent, as you'll know in from our Whoscussion talks, that's why humanoid aliens in New Who don't work.
Yeah, humanoid aliens in New Who are a bit of a problem.
You need just because of our simian brain, just immediately on a subconscious level identifying with humanoid features just kind of makes just take them to note.
Well, another thing is if they just look like humans, then your brain instantly goes, "That's just a human."
Yeah.
And makeup. And it's just like,
Unfortunately,
it's like why I love the Chumblies from the Galaxy 4, where they're like these hideous creatures, but they're nice. And I don't think that's ever done ever again in all of Doctor Who, to be honest.
Right. But curse our simian brains for immediately identifying with things that look human.
Yeah, how dare we?
But anyway, we also get some more glimpses of Kalera's life. And we discover that she was hired as an assistant to the junior archivist at the Gallifreyan Archives, which is basically the assistant to the assistant of the assistant.
Yeah, exactly.
And she's a little bit miffed by that because her scores academically, IQ and everything, they're all way up there. But obviously with her psychic powers, they're all a little bit not willing to put her in much place where she can do harm, but she's very insulted by this. But it does put her in the position to meet the 11, where she goes to interview him, and that doesn't go well. But we'll come back to that in a minute. And just again,
so this means that this takes place after 7, right? After 7 arrested 11.
I'd say so. Yes.
Cool.
But So Doctor's having dinner with the Lord Stormblood and Jacqueline King, and they eventually kind of go. They invite him because they get to the point where they claim they don't know who the Doctor is, but they know who the Doctor is. So the Doctor has come to join us. But they just try to enlist his help to, and they just get him to go downstairs and they bump into Liv, because Liv has gone to find the doctor to try and do something about the prisoner they've found. Oh, and other prisoners all about the place. It's like, the doctor will fix this. The doctor's less than happy to find that Liv and Helen have not obeyed him, but that's par for the course, I guess. When do the companions ever stay still in the TARDIS when you tell them to?
Never.
Yeah, exactly.
I think never is. They really should, though, because they know that his adventures are mega dangerous. So when he's like, "Please don't come out," I would actually just like, if it was me, and some alien was like, "Don't come because it's going to be scary," I'd listen.
Yeah, it's like, yep, cool. I'm just going to nip down to the pool in the library, have a bit of relax. You go and sort out whatever you need to. I'll be here.
Yeah, I'll help you with the Daleks, but if you're actually scared of what happens here, then I'll leave you to it.
Yeah, pretty much. Exactly. But yeah, so they go downstairs, and the doctor comes across Kalera all wired up and whatnot. And the doctor, of course, being the doctor, immediately feels for her and tries to do what he can. And they're trying to work out a way to free her. But unfortunately, the advanced level to which she's wired up is a bit beyond him, and he's a bit, not sure what to do. And Lord Stormblood is less than kind of keen on the idea that they will tamper with their plans, and kind of kicks up a bit of a fuss. But Liv creates a very nice diversion and gets them running off after her, goes and frees some prisoners. Why not? So that gets Lord Stormblood and Lady Sepultura out of the way, while the Doctor and Helen try to work out what on earth they're going to do to save Kalera. Meanwhile, we kind of cut back in time again to realizing that the 11 this is the point where he has escaped, and we know that Kalera has got hold of a TARDIS, and at the time, we presume, helps the chief archivist to escape. And then we go back to Lord Stormblood, who reveals that no, they're not actually the ones doing the experimenting. They're just slaves in all this as well.
Yeah, exactly.
That was a bit of a... Okay. There's a bit of a plot twist. So Kalera's actually masterminded the whole thing. She might be in pain, but this is all her own doing. And we realize that she had a hand in helping the 11 escape. She basically kidnapped Lord Stormblood, Lady Sepultura, took some prisoners, messed with their minds a bit, which is why they're a bit doolally. And unfortunately...
Yeah, it's putting it so mildly.
Yes, putting it very mildly. But their demise is not so mild. So the Doctor and Helen, because they play a bit of a false parallel narrative with Kalera and Helen here, because Helen obviously was a brilliant. What was she?
Well, she was an archivist as well.
Yes, archaeologist.
She's linguistic archaeologist.
Thank you.
She studies dead languages.
Yes, thank you. And she was shunned by her superiors, although to be fair, she did have a supposed hand in getting a whole lot of art destroyed and or stolen and ruined, so there is that.
But yeah, she's actually a criminal now. It's like awesome.
But anyway, she was definitely shunned by those.
Yeah, but her good mate wasn't shunning her though. Yeah, if you think back to the Red Woman, her good mate was like, "I'm actually trying to help."
Yeah,
she's like, "But you're not helping fast enough." He's like, "Dude, it's the '60s. Like, there's so much I can't do."
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So her immediate friend,
is the only one helping her.
Yeah, but unfortunately, the powers that be were not so good, and much like the Academy for Kalera, they weren't too happy on giving her a power of position of power. I can do words.
Many words can do.
Yes, exactly. And so Kalera has taken herself to basically expand her mental powers, been experimenting, and she succeeds in that, gets the Doctor to help throw the switch and freeze her, essentially. And now that she is basically God level power now. Whoops. She just...
Because the Doctor was like, it was the only way I could think to help her.
Yes, the only way I can help her is basically make her god tier powerful. Whoops. um, so now that she's free and reveals herself in her proper powerful form and malevolence, just gets rid of the force field, keeping this rickety TARDIS afloat in the vortex. Poor Lord Stormblood, and Jacqueline can get ripped off into the time winds, which would be a brutal way to go.
Yeah. Let's just remember 2 literally did that to Salamander.
Yeah, that. Let's just also remember that the War Master actually did that to Lila.
Yeah. Oh, hey, why did you have to go there? Man, I was so angry when that happened. Sorry, we're getting off base. But
I remember when you messaged me. That was.
I was so livid when that happened.
Actually, though.
Yeah, I was just like, "How dare you, sir? How dare you?
How dare you, Space Satan?"
Yeah. How dare you, actually, legitimately evil guy?
So now that and Cleo basically skedaddles, but not after telling that her love, who we will find out is later on in Doom Coalition, has plans for the Doctor. So she's not going to kill him yet. There's more parts for him to play in this grand scheme. But now that she pops off, and now that the force fields are gone, this rickety TARDIS is falling to pieces. The Doctor and Liv and Helen dash it back to the TARDIS, but they want to save all the prisoners that are on there. So the Doctor does a very dodgy trick of extending his force field and flinging them out into real space so they can drift and hopefully get picked up. Unfortunately, this leaves them careering out of control and about to crash, and that's where our story ends.
You can sow words because it's careening.
Is that an actual word, or was I misusing that?
No, never mind. When you go back and edit this, you'll be like, I see.
Okay, I shall message.
Because I know what you I know what you wanted to say, and it's not what you said.
Oh dear. Well, I'm hoping that the context I used the word.
Oh no, it was perfect.
My intention was.
Absolutely.
We got there. Words. But that random guy, your thoughts on scenes from her life?
I loved the couple. Yeah. I mean, they weren't actually a couple. They'd like been so crazy that they seeked solace in each other, and it made them like a couple. It reminds me of the Celestial Toymaker, where what's her name, Dodo, goes into. And she's a character who got kicked off the show pretty weirdly, eh? But Dodo is in a kitchen with a soldier and a cook. And their interaction reminded me heavily of that interaction, which isn't a bad thing because, as you might know, the Celestial Toymaker is my favorite villain of all the Doctor Who.
Absolutely.
And the Celestial Toymaker is also one of my favorite stories. Just because the idea that there's a god out there that turns living creatures into toys is the most horrifying thing Doctor Who's ever done. Like, ever. God is just like, I'm bored, I'm going to turn living beings into literal playthings, and they can't do anything about it because I'm a god. That's freakier than any of the mythology that's out there on Earth. Like, legitimately.
Do you remember back in Series 6 where I think you may have mentioned it, but when we legit thought
the Mark Gator story, and I thought it was going to be the Celestial Toy Room.
Yeah, was it the Night Terrors? I think it was.
Yeah, that turned out to be one of the most awful stories ever written by mankind. Yeah, I remember that. I was there. I was present. So I love that interaction. I feel like the story kind of had we need to have Liv and Helen do something. If you know what I mean, like I felt like they weren't as integral. I felt like they should have just been in the TARDIS, and then the Doctor comes back and he's screwed up majorly, and is like, "Hey guys, I screwed up bad." Like, you know what I mean? Like
they did find the prisoners in the dungeon, and without them,
yeah. But I think Eight could have come across that before he went to the kitchen, into the dining room.
That's true.
You know what I mean? Like I just felt this whole story felt like Liv and Helen didn't need to be there. And that's not a good thing. I don't think the story is bad at all. I love the idea of this like dead TARDIS. It harkens back to the bigger on the inside getting out from what was it called, the Trenzalore, or Name of the Doctor?
Yeah,
from Name of the Doctor. And so that imagery was beautiful. I love Gallifrey. I love Gallifrey. Like, just absolutely love Gallifrey. Mark Gatiss said once that if you go to Gallifrey too often, you make it domestic. But I'm okay with that. Like, if you've listened to the audio series Gallifrey, which is on 11 seasons now, it's so good. And I'm like, I like that sort of like, you feel like you're living on Gallifrey. I love the world, I love the architecture. So when you've got these two older Gallifreyans who, this is like just before the Time War's breaking out, and they're doing, they're suppressing a psychic. I'm like, man, you guys are gonna wish you didn't do that when the Daleks started invading. Could you imagine Kalera on the front lines? She'd just be like, bzz, bzz, bzz. The Daleks are like, hey, truce? You guys want a truce, please?
Oh, they should have done that.
Yeah, exactly. So, but they made an enemy of Kalera, and Gallifrey does that a lot. Gallifrey makes its own greatest enemies. It's something I really enjoy about Doctor Who, is that when it comes to like these ancient foes or these god tier beings that are up against the Time Lords, or the greatest threat to Time Lords, you find out Time Lords are responsible for their animosity. It's like, the Great Others, which actually ties into the next story we're going to talk about. The Great Others, they only really, the Time Lords and them only really don't get along because Rassilon started a war against them. And he's the reason they're in this universe. Rassilon broke through the dimensional barriers and brought them in. Yep. It's not their fault they came through. It's Rassilon's.
Yep.
So this idea that they make their worst enemies, I like. So having Kalera be like, I hate Gallifrey, I think is just Doctor Who at its finest, because again, the Time Lords made their own worst enemy.
Indeed.
Because Kalera is bad news.
Yeah, very much so.
She's mega bad news, ultra bad news even. She's super bad. So it's hopefully a better narrative than that. But it's just again, I feel like Liv and Helen would have worked best not being in the story. I know the actresses need something to do, but there's been stories within these Eighth Doctor box sets where it's just been either just the companions or just the Doctor. And again, this would have worked way better if it was just the Doctor. Yes. I mean, you can disagree with me. Oh, yeah, no, I felt like they would. And like the whole like playing into Helen's past transgressions against her, which is interesting. I don't think that's a bad thing to do, but I feel like Helen as a character, as we know her and we go on to know her in future stories, I think she's far too intelligent to fall for something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just felt like you've made Helen dumb, which is the number one thing you should never do with female characters, and Big Finish is usually really good at not doing. So I liked the stuff 8 was doing, but if they were going to use Helen and Liv, they should have used them better. And again, I feel like the story didn't have room for them because it's claustrophobic, even though they're in this giant city landscape, as they describe it, and it's very tight, right? They're in, you imagine the TARDIS corridors, they're always tight, and they're in the older TARDIS than even the Type 40 the Doctor has. That means they must be even crapper. I know that's not even a word, but you know what I mean? Like, it's of lesser quality than. And so for me, again, and I'm walking around in circles here, but I just feel the story would have been a significantly tighter, more nuanced if it was just the Doctor screwing up. And then he comes to the TARDIS and like, what happened? He's like, I did something real not good. And then they go, we should have been not in the TARDIS, right? And then that could have been like an implication for us as the audiences. Would this have gone better if they were there? Which we know in this version of the story it wasn't. It actually made things worse. But I always like when the Doctor fails on his own accord. And it could have been an instance where he's just like, if I ever tell you to stay in the TARDIS again, don't.
Yeah.
Something where he's regretful of that decision. I don't know. I think it would have made the story stronger. I did love the reveal that Lord Stormblood and Lady Sepucha. I think the reveal that they were her teacher and Was it the Doctor?
Doctor or Examiner or something
Yeah,
like that.
of the Examiner pilot, and so that means that Swordfish was somehow Gallifreyan as well, I presume. So I like that. Like, there's a whole bunch of Gallifreyans just in the room. It seems like a bit of an old school joke. 4 Gallifreyans walking to a bar, sort of thing.
Oh, that's right. Swordfish was Kalira's psychosurgeon.
Oh, right. So it's I don't know. I just feel like it could have been tighter.
Yeah.
That simple change would have made it so. But that's just me.
No, I agree. I definitely enjoyed the story. I mean, to be fair, I don't think I've come across a Big Finish. Oh no, wait. All but one. I've enjoyed every Big Finish story I've ever listened to, and that one is actually one we talked about last time we were doing this. But but yeah.
Oh, the Big Finish story I like the least is Exile, which is the first female Doctor.
Oh, that was part of the Unbound, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's not good.
Oh dear.
I was like, that is why BBC never talked about the first female Doctor being in that story, because it's no good.
Oh dear, I shall not listen to that.
Don't ever listen to it. Period.
All right then.
Even Nicholas Briggs says that's one of the worst things I've ever written.
Well, at least you can admit it.
Yeah, well, you have to, man. It's bad. Like if you don't admit it, you're just lying to yourself.
Yeah, well, I've written some bad things, so
we all have. We all actually have.
But no, definitely. I enjoy the story. I agree with you. The couple were great. Just any time you throw some over the top British accented characters into it, it's just a good time.
Agreed.
I always like when the 11's around. I like it more when I think I enjoy him more when he's only just like a tidbit of him. So he's still a bit of a mystery at this point. He isn't.
Yeah, he isn't fully explored.
So Mark Bond he's a great performance artist.
One of the best. He's one of the best Big Finishes ever picked up, to be honest.
But I don't really have much more to add that hasn't already been said. Really enjoyed it. I do apologise to listeners about the large gap between this and the last story that we covered, but life goes on.
Life does go on. It's one of the things that I was like happy about when we gave up Whoscussion was like getting my life back.
Yeah.
Like I was so happy to get my life back. You'll not even understand, man. So yeah, it's I'm glad that you've decided to pick it up in this way to continue it on. I'm actually rather humbled by the suggestion. I'm looking forward to where this series goes, to be honest. Because Big Finish is huge. I think it's the best Who has to offer currently, and probably will for many years to come, until somebody decides to do something good with the television series.
That's the plan.
God forbid. That's that. That is me.
Fantastic. Right. Well, in that case, will I give that a wrap on Scenes from Her Life and move over to the 6th Doctor and Evelyn in Project Twilight. That random guy, take us away.
So Project Twilight is kind of what it says in the box, really. It's about vampires.
Yep.
That's not like like something that would be revealed later. It's revealed pretty much instantly in the beginning. It's 1915, the year of our Lord 1915. It's obviously, if you know your history, it's World War One. I mean, you watch Doctor Who, you should probably know some history. There is a doctor, Dr. William Aberton, who's working on the Project Twilight with a organization known as the Forge, which, in my opinion, is what Torchwood should have been instead of Torchwood. There's couldn't it just been the Forge? Better than what Russell T was originally going to call it, Excalibur. Amazing. That's so dumb. I hate everything about that. Especially since 7 was supposed to be Merlin, so So that goes ahead. We have 2 beings break out to save one of the other beings. They kill, quotation marks, William Aberton, and then we have the Doctor eating food from a Chinese takeaway in London, Southeast London, which they say so many times. I love it. It becomes like a running gag in the episode. Southeast London. So they're in Southeast London, and they're eating food from a place called the Slow Boat, which is apparently the Sixth Doctor, one of his favorite eateries. So he comes to this time period, legitimately have a feed. The TARDIS probably gave him this craving so that he could turn up and stop whatever's happening here. I feel like that's what happened. You know, the TARDIS was like, you know what, bro, I'm going to give you this craving. And since we're telepathically linked, you're going to have this craving. And you're going to go to the Slow Boat and then come across a skirmish that happens in the streets. So there is a club that is called the Dusk, LOL, from dusk to dawn. Yep. Very famous Robert Rodriguez vampire flick. And so they're working at the Dusk. There is a young girl by the name of Cassie. She's a new starter there. There's a fellow by the name Reggie Mead, who's a very sort of he's a very Bill Sykes type of character. If you guys are familiar with the works of Charles Dickens, or even the amazing musical Oliver with an exclamation mark. That's what I always call it, because it's actually what it's called. So he's running this bar. They've got a sort of a matron of the bar called Amelia Dory, and Amelia. And they all run this bar. Cassie is the new blood there, and she goes, "I'm going to go home for the night." And Reggie's like, "Hey, you look after yourself there, Cassie," because Reggie's somehow still keen on the temptations of the flesh. I know that's like a vampire trope. It's a whole thing. It's just vampire trope 101, but like not in a bad way. It's hard to describe. But anyway, the Doctor comes across a skirmish because one of Reggie's boys has gone out and found himself in a skirmish with a guy wearing armor, and is driven through the heart with a stake, because of course he is. So the Doctor goes ahead, goes to try and stop it. The fella dies. Is dying. The Doctor goes, "I need to get you to a hospital." The guy goes, No, take me to this bar called the Dusk. The Doctor's like, "I'm not entirely sure that's the smartest course of action, but you're freaking out." And as I'm the Doctor, I usually help freaking out people in the way they want to be helped. So they go to the bar, they end up getting embroiled in Reggie and Amelia's plans. Then the guy they were helping, Eddie, he pops. He literally pops. The Evelyn's freaking out. The Doctor goes, "Well, that was unexpected. Anybody kind of want to tell me why a person has popped?" And they're like, "Well," and he's like, "Look, if you guys need help, I'll help." So he starts helping them out. This guy called Nimrod starts causing disturbances for them. They're working on a cure. I don't know if you guys can see because this is audio, but I'm doing quotation marks. Working on a cure. And a fella by the name of, was it Matthew? What was his name? Matthew? I think it was Matthew. So Matthew turns up, this other vampire who works with one of the other sects of vampires, because they all became separatists, because of course they did. They're like, "Oh, let's make clans." It's like, why don't you just work together? No, clans. It's like, oh, that's the dumb human side of you coming out. So the dumb human side of them has them all separated because, of course, segregation never works. Don't do it. But they want to do it. And Matthew turns up, he's like, "Here, go half the blood." And then Reggie's like, "What do you mean half the blood, mate?" Breaks his fingers. And he's like, "I'm so sorry." He's like, you better give me the rest of that blood, mate." I'm like, "Well, we don't think the cure, we don't think this the project is worth it." And she's like, "You literally don't know how close I am to figuring stuff out." She wasn't, by the way. It just happened to be her night. Yeah. So the Doctor turns up, and he's all like, "Cool, I'm going to help out." And in the interim, Cassie's caught snooping around, and Reggie doesn't like that. "I don't like that a lot, Cassie." So he starts hurting Cassie. Evelyn's like, "You brute, get away from her." And ends up taking her home.
Yep.
Reggie's all like, "I need to find out about this Doctor bloke." So he calls up his mates who get all of his unit information. And these are like, "Doctor, I know all about you. For some reason, I think that knowledge will be power in this situation." And Six is like, "Lol, no." So he lol knows at him, and Reggie's like, "I don't like when people lol know at me, because I'm one of those old school gangster bobbies." So he's an old school gangster bobby who didn't move with the times. And so he thinks that like shouting and being aggressive at people will get him what he wants. And then modern society blew his mind. It actually made people not listen to him. He's like, oh, people aren't listening to me. It's like, yeah, because you act like a dickhead from the early 20th century. So maybe don't do that. People would listen. It's like, but I'm Reggie, mate, Reggie. So stuff doesn't go his way. Things start falling apart. He becomes literally blood drunk. And he just gets out of control, really. The Cassie and Evelyn are at her place. Cassie's all like, oh, I've been trying to find out how they cook in the books, but I found out nothing. And then Evelyn's like, oh, that's crazy. Oh, it's written in code. Maybe my old husband used to be good at code, but he's not alive anymore. Just a reminder I'm old. I was like, we didn't really need that reminder, Big Finish, but all right. So they're there. The doctor's helping out. And he's like, I've done it. With these nanobots that were inside this arrow, we figured it out. And then Amelia's like, I've been evil this whole time. And the doctor's like, oh my goodness. And then Nimrod turns up and goes, by the way, they're vampires. And he's like, no, I'm racist towards vampires because I'm genetically designed that way. And Evil is like, stop being racist. Also, Cassie's in trouble. And then, I'm so glad we're finally talking about this story because this pissed me off when I originally listened to it, when we were going to do it for Whoscussion, and now I'm even more pissed off re-listening to it. Oh, no. So bloody Reggie walks into the room and he goes, I'm clearly here to hurt Cassie. And Evelyn's like, oh, are you? He's like, yeah, I definitely am. She's like, cool, I'm going to leave Cassie with you. I'm like, what? I almost threw my phone across the room being reminded this happened. I was like, what in the hell? Evelyn her brain turned off. She was like, oh, I'm dumb now. I was like, what? And it pissed me off because Evelyn is intelligent. What is she doing? Going, I've got a great idea. Well, I'm going to leave this guy who wants to clearly kill this woman with him. And she's like, hey, I'm Cassie and I'm afraid. Please don't leave me with this guy. And she goes, I'm going to leave you with him. And then she started talking like Barney the dinosaur. And I'm just like, oh no, she didn't actually, by the way, guys. That's just me getting irritated with her character doing something that she wouldn't do. Anyway, she goes, I love you, you love me. And then she goes downstairs and she goes, doctor, you wanted me to talk to you. And the doctor's like, lol, no, why are you here? And she's like, oh, I've been duped. I was like, yes, you've been duped. And she's like, I'm so surprised. They walk into the room and then he's all like, oh, I beat her up. Which is that thing you could have stopped from happening if you just didn't leave the room, Evelyn. And I was just like, yo, for real, what's his name? Or her name? Probably a guy. Hang on. Okay, so Kevin Scott and Mark Wright. Don't ever do that again. Just have Evelyn turn her brain off because it's so out of character. It's too out of character. So please, never, ever again. Please. Mm-hmm. So Cassie's beaten up because that's 100% what was going to happen. Yeah. And she's like, oh, I'm beaten up. And I'm like, yep, I know. And then she's like, you Bruce, I can't believe you did that. And then Reggie's like, we're going to put the doctor in this thing. And then Evelyn gets turned into bait. They decide, and then bloody Amelia's like, doctor, you know how I said I was evil earlier? And he's like, oh, yeah, I kind of didn't hear you for some reason. Well, I'm definitely evil now. And by the way, this isn't a cure. I'm going to reverse engineer it and make it so that it turns every human into a vampire. And the doctor's like, what have I done? And Evelyn's like, well, you haven't done what I did, which was turn my brain off and allow a woman to get beaten up by a vampire man when I knew that was going to happen. And he's like, yeah, that's fully your bad, by the way. And she's like, oh, yeah, I know. I'm so sorry, doctor. He's like, yeah, so he's not going to rebuild her face. And then they inject Cassie with rebuilding her face technology, also called Become a Vampire. And so she ends up getting healed. And she's like, I'm so strong now. And then Reggie, now he's a character I would expect it from. Reggie goes, I better just free her. She won't hurt me instead of Evelyn. Well, she hurts Reggie instead of Evelyn.
Funny that.
Yeah, I was like, who did not see that coming? Reggie. Now, of all the characters in the story, Reggie's the one I'd believe that from because he's not the sharpest tool in the shed, but he thinks he is. He's like, oh, I'm definitely sharp. And the doctor's like, no, you're not, lol. It's like, Oh, Reggie! So Reggie gets beaten up, and Cassie's all like, I'm Super Saiyan level 3 vampire because of what Amelia did to me. And Reggie's like, I'm Reggie! So he's Southeast Londoning on the floor. And then they're like, we're going to go. And then the doctor's like, this is bad. And then Nimrod turns up and is like, I'm going to help you, doctor. The doctor's like, aren't you evil? He's like, sort of, not really, maybe. You just wait for the sequel, okay? Like, there's going to be a sequel to the story. It's like, yeah, man, this so is. And then they go to this blood bank where they find out that they've made human cattle. And the doctor's like, this is inhumane. And Nimrod's like, your favorite species on Earth do this to other animals? He didn't actually say that, but that would have been a great time to bring that up. But like, you know how you love humans? They literally do this to literally other sentient beings. But they didn't do that. And doctor's like, oh man, I need to help them. And he's like, you can't. They don't know how to think. And the doctor's like, oh, they legit don't know how to think. And so Nimrod's like, well, I'm going to blow this place up and you can just feel sad about it later on. The doctor's like, yeah, okay, I'll take that option. So they go off. Evelyn got saved by Cassie, and Cassie's all like, I'm a monster. Nimrod blows up the place. The doctor's like, no, Nimrod, you blew up the place. And Amelia's like, I'm evil. The doctor's like, I know, you mentioned that earlier. So they have a tussle. And then Amelia falls into the water. And she's like, I've fallen into the water. And the doctor's like, she might be dead because that's how Matthew died earlier. Floyd forgot to mention it. And the doctor's like, well, Cassie, come with me in the TARDIS. We can figure stuff out. She's like, I don't want to do it in the TARDIS. I want to go to Norway. And the doctor's like, oh, that is so sequel bait. And it's annoying. No, sorry, that wasn't the doctor. That was me. Don't sequel bait like that, please, ever. Just don't. So she's all like, I'm going to stay in Norway. And the doctor's like, cool, that's a great idea. You should stay in Norway. And I'm like, no, you should force her to stay on the TARDIS because she's a vampire and your super space magic can help her. Like, take her to Gallifrey. They'll be like, hey, we're racist against her. He's like, calm down. She's not evil. Can you help fix her? And then Gallifrey will be like, well, we're literally space wizards, so yes. And then they can just space wizard her. But instead, they were like, we're going to set up a sequel. And I was like, oh, no.
Yeah.
No. So they set up a sequel that way. And you know what? All in all, it was pretty good. But I'm going to get that Late Crow's opinion, and then I'll give mine, if that's okay.
Fantastic. Sounds like a good plan. So, yeah, this was definitely a great story. And to be fair, I listened to it a while ago, back when we were about to do it for Whoscussion, but we know how that turned out.
We sure do.
But yeah, because back then I'd always listen to these stories while I was working the night shift, which is what I did at the time. That was my Big Finish time. Yeah, the number of times listening to Big Finish, I would just realize I wasn't working. I was just engrossed in the story.
Oh no, that's bad, man.
I was like,
that's bad.
Yeah, I've stood here for 2 minutes doing literally nothing. Better do something before the boss walks past.
Yeah, I know. I'm much the opposite of that. It helps me focus, especially when I'm doing things like chores and stuff. I'd rather be listening to Big Finish than not.
And I'd always rather be listening to Big Finish, but it's not always ideal to getting work done for me. But
yeah, 100%. That sounds like not a great time.
And on the whole, I was pretty good, but especially when stories are this good, definitely at least moments where you have to do almost an audio double take with your ears. It's like, what? That's okay.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that's silly.
Or just moments that are just so over the top. Like when Eddie just exploded? Like,
that was my favorite because just how Six responds. He's like, well. I genuinely don't know how to respond to this.
Just imagine him sort of like an almost dumbfounded expression, just casually wiping some muck off his top or something. But
which is funny because that's alluded to earlier by him wiping off the chicken and mayonnaise from his lapel.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So that's some good writing.
Yes, very good.
That's some like Chekhov gun, like he used correctly sort of shiz.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it when as I was talking about when we were covering the last story, give me over the top British accent. This time at the other end of the spectrum.
Reggie.
Just South East London, mate.
And I love how everybody goes South East London when they refer to Reggie, because like even Evelyn just calls them Southeast London. So I was just like, that's amazing. Thank you, Evelyn.
That's so good. Yeah, I agree with you on just that. That one thing with Evelyn that was a bit like, eh?
Oh, it's so dumb, mate. She's like he's clearly gonna abuse this woman. You can stop that from happening. And she doesn't. I was so irritated by that because it's just poor writing.
Yeah, and in other stories where Evelyn's been used, she's definitely got a quite a strong, I think, maternal factor.
Yeah.
So she definitely wouldn't leave her in a room alone with Reggie.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, you just wait until you listen to Pirate Story. Dang, that maternal instinct there.
Is that Pirate Story the one where a section of it's a musical?
Yes. Yes, it is. It's so good.
I'm so hyped for that.
The genre changes every part.
I'm so hype.
That's amazing.
Just as a person who loves musicals, that's just right up my street. Big Finish and musical, two of my favorite loves. Yes. But no. Apart from a couple of hiccups, sequel baiting, and Evelyn dumb decision making.
Yeah.
Apart from that, it was a very enjoyable story. I love Nimrod. I loved him as an addition to the canon, even though he's not the best or not. He's not the nicest person in the world, but he's just I don't know. I like him. He's definitely a good character addition. But overall, very happy. I love it. I love 6. I love what Big Finish have done and are doing with 6. And yeah, that's about it, really. That random guy. How about you?
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same boat. I love the story. I love the Great Others. I think it's a great part of Doctor Who canon where they tried to do it a little bit and they've failed spectacularly with those like fish vampires. Why couldn't they have just been real Great Others? Yeah. Why couldn't they just been real Great Others? I don't get it.
There's Doctor Who has actual vampires. Why would you make up new ones?
Yeah, dumb ones too. Fucking fish people. Get over here with that nonsense. I'll punch you in the head, straight up.
Remember when Gallifrey took vampires and basically turned Leela into a
turned into a super werewolf person.
Yeah,
because that's what they did, right? They healed her eyes with it.
Yeah,
and Gallifrey and made her like basically Super Saiyan level 3. I was just like, that's amazing. But it's Big Finish's ability to go into the mythos and make something new is fantastic. Where humanity probably found the remains of a great other, is what I presume happened.
Yeah.
They found the remains of a great other and were like, hot damn, World War I's breaking out, and let's do this. When they mentioned DNA, that was a bit weird for me because DNA isn't discovered for a good 80 years after World War One. So that was a bit irksome for me. But in saying that, though, there have been instances where technology and scientific discovery was classified until many years later. It's like the internet was originally created as the DARPANET in the 60s. So, when did we start having the internet in our homes? The 90s. So there's a 30-year gap between it existing and then it being public knowledge. So it's feasible. It definitely is feasible that these secret services of England, as well as the Forge, knew about DNA technology. And DNA theory, so I can sort of buy it there, considering they're this big secret group, and I think it's handled better than Torchwood handled being a big secret group.
Almost everything British does is handled better than Torchwood.
I've never listened to any of the Torchwood stuff, so I'm wondering if they've handled Torchwood better than Torchwood.
Story, which I really enjoyed. It was one, I can't remember. It was the story that just has Owen and Reese.
Oh, yeah?
That was a good story.
Oh, okay, cool. So they have actually managed to fix even Big Finish can fix Torchwood. That's amazing. So yeah, I think going into the mythos, looking at what can we do new, right?
Yeah.
And to come at something this fresh, I think is fantastic. I wish New Who as a show could do it.
Absolutely.
But we'll never get New Who very rarely toys with ideas that are unique and interesting. And I'm not saying that to be like, New Who sucks, because, you know, things like God Complex exist, things like Midnight exist. You know, Doctor Who, New Who can do it.
Yes.
But I think it needs to come at this angle a lot. Like, you know, there are some stinkers. Let's not beat around the bush here. There are some stinkers in classic Who. You know, there are.
Yeah.
But the good outweighed 24. The bad. Yeah, season 24. And that was because of, you know, BBC's intervention. And that happened this time. BBC interfered with the creativity available for New Who, and it tanked.
Yeah.
I'm literally praying that Jodie Whittaker gets a second season that's worthy of her acting prowess and of the rest of the cast.
Yeah.
Because she deserves good scripts, and she's not got been given a single one.
No.
And that's not fair on her at all. So when she can get a good script, and we get we get the storytelling of Big Finish, please. Well, I mean, you know, it's like we talked about it in the Whoscussion, right? Is Robert Shearman came back and readapted Dalek.
Yep.
Right? And as much as I think that suffered from being in series 1/season 27, I think it's a good story.
Yeah.
And then when you have Paul Cornell, the only thing New Who's ever done with his work was adapt a Seventh Doctor story, and it's amazing.
Yes.
It's just like, the EU writers are better.
Yeah.
And it's nice because you sound like a fanboy when you say stuff like that. Like, the EU writers are better. And then you like adjust your glasses.
All that time that an EU writer wrote the, was it Beast Below and Satan Pit, I think it was? No, The Impossible Planet and Satan Pit. Which were again.
Oh, really?
I think, wasn't it? Didn't we cover that?
My long-term memory is not very good, but that wouldn't surprise me if an EU writer wrote that, because that just sounds so EU writing. So yeah, that's the thing, and it's frustrating for me that BBC don't put the focus like that. You know, they don't focus on trying to get the best out of the franchise they own. And I kind of want them to put it in someone else's hands, to be honest.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely. Impossible Planets was written by Matt Jones, who has written for Virgin Books and Big Finish.
Yeah. Yes. So he's an EU writer. That makes so much sense. Yeah, because like that's experimentation on a level New Who would never be brave enough to take.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. I love that. Well, that's pretty much me, really. Yeah.
So that's us for this month. Might be a while before we have that random guy back again.
Yeah, it might be a wee while.
But because he's going to be off doing some amazing stuff in personal life, and I wish him all the very best for.
Thank you very much
for that. And next time I know I said this will be monthly, but I think it's going to turn into a when I have the time more so than anything else. I'm going to try to keep it monthly, but we shall just have to see where we go. And hopefully you guys will be there to listen when we are. Have a good day.
See you guys later.